Good morning, I hope you're all keeping well. For this week, you're going to be focusing on fabric finishes and surface treatments on a whole range of materials, not just textiles. We'll also be briefly looking at the other 4 areas that you need to know about for the exam. Although obviously your specialism is textiles, so that one is the one that you will probably choose to answer questions on. By the end of this session, you will hopefully be able to understand and give reasons as to why some materials, not all, have a surface treatment applied to them or a fabric finish. For this PowerPoint, can you please pause it every so often, make notes, make sure that you know what the names of the finishes and treatments are and where they're used and why. Really important, because this will come up in your exam at some point. It's something you will also probably have to consider at some point in your NEA, which is your major piece of coursework. So by the end of this session, all of you, aiming to hopefully achieve like a grade 3, grade 4, will be able to name at least 2 different types of finish or treatments and the materials that they are used on. Most of you will hopefully be able to describe why 3 finishes or treatments are used on certain materials and fabrics. Some of you, to go a stage further, aiming for grade 7, 8, 9, will hopefully be able to explain the benefits, the good points of using a wide range of finishes or treatments, and also how they are actually applied. So what is the purpose of a finish and what is a treatment for materials? Just because it's called a finish doesn't mean it's added at the end. Okay, a finish means an improved appearance. So you might say that a particular light has a lovely appearance, a lovely finish. The main reasons for finishing materials improve their function, so what they do, how long they last, which is known as durability, and aesthetics, so how it looks. And you can see that here in both of these pictures. You've got metal on the left there. You can see before it was all discoloured, starting to corrode and rust, and then afterwards it's all one even colour that's a bit shinier. On the right hand side there you can see a wood that is being varnished to protect it, making it more durable, and you can see the sort of before and after photograph there too. So the first of our 5 material areas is metal. Metals are often coated to improve the appearance, but also to add protection. If you think about cars, very often you do not see a shiny, silvery, pure metal car. Very often they are nearly all coated in some kind of paint, and this is for 2 reasons. It's for appearance and it's for protection from rust. Okay, and the ways that metal are coated are dip coating. You can see this in the first photograph. What looks like liquid paint is powder that's then heated up, and it creates a lovely smooth finish to protect and decorate the metal. The second one there, powerful jet spraying a powder onto the metal. The metal is then given an electric current, like an electric shock, which helps to make that powder then turn into a liquid paint. And the third reason or third process is galvanizing. Okay, as we know, metal, particularly if it has iron in it, will rust and corrode, which makes it weaken and not look attractive. It needs to be galvanized, and so you can see here some mild steel being dipped into a bath of molten zinc, so incredibly hot, making it much shinier, much stronger, and definitely more attractive. Plastic and polymers is our second area. Here's a whole range of ways that plastics are made to look better or to last longer. Okay, so the first method here of protecting or improving plastics, in the top right hand side there is polishing. Most of these are for polishing. Okay, so you've got a machine there which is buffing the edges of the plastic, making them shinier. The second method there is using cutting, because the cutting is generating some heat and the heat is sort of melting the edges of the plastic, making it lovely and smooth. Sometimes a liquid might be added to sort of like an acrylic cement to just sort of take away the edge. Waxes are used to buff up and shine, make cars shine, to clean windows that are plastic. At the moment we know that loads of PPE, we know that certainly loads of protective furniture, particularly with screens in Tesco's and all the other shops and school and everywhere really, is going to be made of acrylic. So they'll get dirty at some point and they will be cleaned with some kind of wax, and I imagine some antibacterial spray as well. Vinyl can be used with CAD/CAM, so you can design some lettering, some patterns, some decoration. It's then cut out on this very sort of thin sticker that's then peeled off and attached. And then the last method here, this is a photograph of some cosmetic packaging that's been printed on. So you can use a printer, specialist printer, to print onto plastics to improve the appearance. So the third material area here is timber and wood. Wood is a natural material. It soaks up liquids, it bakes in the sun and expands and can rot if it's left in damp conditions. It really does need a lot of protection, particularly if it's used in houses and things we don't want to break, like, you know, bridges and what have you. So paints can be used. You can get oil-based paints, water or solvent, and they can be sprayed or brushed onto the wood, and you can get all kinds of different colours and effects. Varnishing. Varnishing is an amazing way of making something look smarter but also waterproof. And you can get different coloured varnishes and they can be sprayed or painted on. Spraying is much quicker and it's used if you're trying to cover a huge surface area in industry. The last treatment there is tannalizing, where you use a pressure inside a machine to coat a whole load of wood, which helps to preserve the preservative into it. So it's sort of absorbed in a very high pressure environment and it's sort of soaked in. So now our fourth area is our specialism area. This is the one that you will probably choose to answer exam questions on. When we're back in school, we are going to be trying out these different things, these different processes that you can see in most of the photographs. So we will be trying out block printing and we will be trying out screen printing here in the top two photographs. Block printing on the left, screen printing is on the right. Both of these can be done with machines, but these particular methods you can see in the photographs are done by hand. Okay, they cover a whole surface of fabric. You would use proper fabric dyes which are soaked into the fabric and add obviously a nice method of decoration. Fabrics are also dyed either by hand, which you can see on the left hand there. Someone's wearing rubber gloves and they're squeezing out the liquid in a bowl full of blue dye. But you can also use machines. So if you're dyeing a huge amount of bed sheets, for instance, in this case a sort of reddy orange, then you would need to probably do that with a machine, which can save you a lot of time. So that's how factories would dye fabrics in a huge quantity. And you've got the same here, continuous or batch dyeing. Batch dyeing means a small amount and continuous means a huge amount. So taking bed sheets, which we know many people use all around the world, there's a huge demand for it. You would need your machines to be working continuously, and that's what this is obviously referring to. And you can see that taking place there. Sometimes you can reuse your chemicals, which helps to help the environment with less water pollution because the dyes don't have to be washed away. It's all computer controlled, so it knows exactly how much concentration of the dye to put in, how much to rinse away, how long it needs to dry, and so on. And then the last example here is a stain resistant finish. And you can see there on the surface of the fabric, it's almost got such a waterproof coating that nothing can be absorbed, and those droplets look like they will just brush away. And things like children's school uniform is made using this kind of stain resistant finish, because if we take young primary school children that, you know, slip and slide in mud and grass, parents can do without having to have their clothes dry cleaned. So anything like this is known as easy care. And because obviously we are textile specialists, here are a whole load of other fabric finishes that are used in the textile industry. So just running down the left hand side there, brushing. This is, if you think about any fluffy kind of material that you've maybe had in the way of pajamas, you may still have some that are made of this. It could be bedding, it could be a toy. Brush cotton is where rollers brush up the surface of the fabric, creating a nice, fluffy, soft texture. Embossing is where you press a design into the fabric. So curtain fabric, for instance, sometimes has a surface texture. Calendaring is where you smooth the surface. So if you think about prom dresses, silk ties, if they're made of a polyester, you would have them calendared, where they go through big tight rollers, and that makes a lovely, smooth, shiny surface. Pressing is simply a big industrial way of ironing fabrics, great for things like wool. Shrinkage is where you actually intentionally shrink something so that it won't then shrink for the customer. Permanent creases, very often we can buy trousers that have a permanent crease down the front so it looks like they're regularly ironed. It saves us from having to iron them ourselves. Then we're on to chemical finishes. These are ones that are literally done by spraying the fabric at some point. Water repellent is self-explanatory, so a waterproof jacket would obviously need a water repellent spray. You can buy ones and do them yourself for shoes, trainers, to protect them. Stain resistant I've mentioned, great for anything that would normally get dirty, so sports clothes. You know, for instance, a footballer doesn't want to be wearing something that's going to soak up a stain and have that permanently there. It needs some sort of protective coating. Crease resistance means you don't have to iron the clothing. Flame resistant means, like for firefighters, for the police, for the army, their clothes won't catch on fire. So it's a way of preventing fire and flammability. Shrink resistance I've mentioned, and then anti-allergen. This is where some people who have lots of allergies, lots of really bad eczema and asthma can wear something or sleep in bedding that hasn't got something that's going to make them, you know, have an irritation. So our next category is papers and boards. These are treated in quite a similar way to fabrics and textiles. So the first method that's used to decorate them and improve their appearance is printing. Screen printing and block printing, you can see some screen printing taking place in the top right hand side here, is a way of creating wallpaper or newspapers or posters or pictures, magazines. The paper industry is huge, so lots of different ways. You know, wrapping paper requires printing. Then a bit lower down here you can see a lady lifting up the picture of another lady, and that's known as lithography, where you're sort of pressing an image and then removing it, almost like a transfer. You can see computerized machines there that are printing with high quality gloss. Embossing in the second section there, Parker pens there, so you have a metal design saying Parker and it's pressed into the card, which gives an embossed texture, making it look very smart. So you get a lot of smart packaging that has this effect. And then the last one there is ultraviolet varnishing, where a glossy coating is applied to the surface. You then let it dry in the UV sunlight and it adds a shine just where you want the letters to be in your design. Our final section, so there's actually 6 sections that you have to know about for the exam, is electronic and mechanical systems. So this is all the sort of nitty-gritty of getting things to work inside machinery. Top photograph there, you can see the inside of a circuit board. Okay, you've got all kinds of different components there, resistors, capacitors, and what have you. And you may see a faint shine, and this is because a lot of printed circuit boards have a varnish, a lacquer applied to it, and what that does is it helps to make it basically waterproof. So that's kind of common sense. Much like you treat wood with a varnish, you can also do that with a circuit board, helping to protect the components, maybe hopefully make it more waterproof. If you think about inside of a mobile phone, lots of phones end up getting wet. Anything you can do to protect the electronics is much needed. And then in the last photograph there, you've got lubrication, so to help all machine parts run smoothly, in this case some gears, and oil can be added, and that helps to reduce noise and friction and any heat. So your first task now, taking on board what you've just looked through, and remember you can skip back through this PowerPoint, you can pause it and what have you, is to think about school uniform. Okay, because as I've said, you're textile specialists, so hopefully you can now think about why or what kinds of finishes would be really good for these different areas of school uniform. Okay, one of them I have already mentioned. So you've got polyester school tie. All the materials, all the fibres have been mentioned for you. Polyester, acrylic, polyester, they're all types of synthetic. Okay, they're all made from petrochemicals down the left hand side there. You've got a polycotton blouse, which we have talked about before, a superwash wool jumper, so it's kind of in the name there, a bit of a clue. Think about the properties of wool and what normally happens if you try and wash wool. And then lastly, a woven wool skirt. So that's getting you to think about why you would choose something that is woven rather than knitted. Okay, so you need to think about which finishes could be added to each of these. Some of them might need more than one, and it's really important you say why. And then the final slide here are some questions. Okay, so please write these down with your answers, and this will also feature in a test that I will set before the end of term. Thank you. Goodbye.